나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for practicing Buddhism and making such a profound effect on your world, my world, the world at large. Since I said it that way, I just want to take a moment. We're going to get right into the Diamond Sutra again. Really important section we're going to read today. And I want to preface it with this thought. And if you're interested, I know this is a resource created for our encouragement, added resolve through study of our practice. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. But as you know, I have a fondness for science. And it's funny how everything relates in your mind sometimes. I'm going later today for an MRI because of my neck. So, science, right? Anyway, some of you may not realize that the name of the label that I've put on our activity, our Sangha, is the Quantum Life Buddhism. Not because I'm creating another Buddhism, but simply because I want to recognize the profundity of Shakyamuni's teachings, almost 3,000 years old, to have perceived and understood the true nature of the process of life is constantly being proven out by more and more scientific research, digging, fact-finding, and it bears out. And it's just, that alone is kind of mind-boggling to me. So I would not mind doing another video. I did a whole series, but it was pretty wordy on the origins of life, the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, Ichen and Sanzen, all of that. Several years ago, I did a whole series on that. But I could reinvigorate that thinking and maybe into more of a relatable way. When you hear me constantly talking about potential and moment-to-moment manifestation of that potential, I'm really using the language of quantum. Now, quantum would talk about probability. You're probably aware. If you're not, I don't want to make this a science video, but what we call particles, what we should really call them, that particles is kind of a misnomer because it makes us think of something like, a golf ball, a particle, a thing. But what it is really is a collection of tendencies, and it's an identifying label for a probability in its instantiation. You see how Buddhist like that is? And so in quantum, when we talk about probability of anything, any mass or non-mass, photons are probability also. What we're talking about with Buddhist language is that probability is a definition of potential. See, potential goes just a little layer deeper. Not that quantum doesn't, but quantum is about defining what happens with that potential, right? Quantum is about the observable physical world, samsara, whereas Buddhism says, yeah, that's all well and good. You're in samsara. You're absolutely right. But all of samsara is of something else, is of, from, manifested of, and that is energy, quiescent energy. And that's where we go with Buddhism, right? So when we talk about potential, and then probability would be the next stage, we're talking about the formations, energy in formations, and then we get to karma, right? And you hear me talk about the freight train of karma that each one of us is. But here's what this is all I want to say. I'm not going to get into the full discussion, but you've probably heard, whether you're into science or not, because it's in the movies, and we get these versions in the movies of the multiverse, right? Multiverse, multiple universes. And if you know a little bit more about science, you're saying, well, that multiverse comes from the thinking that anything that could happen can be anything until it's, and here's the trick word, observed or measured. And so right away, being human beings, everything we think about is in relation to this ego, this self. So that means that if I had done something different in the past, gone on that date instead of shunning it, or picked B instead of A, I would be in a different universe. I would be in a different world, right? Multiverse, multi-worlds. Do you see how close that language is to the language of Shakyamuni and Buddhism? So this is all I want you to consider for the moment. And again, if you want me to do a deeper dive, put more words to that whole thing, I'll do drawings because it's easier to see the step-by-step logic of Buddhism here as it relates to our scientific vocabulary. When we talk about the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, we are talking about a multiverse. We are talking about each one of us in point of fact, you and I, are different universes. What? Yeah. If you understand, without being egocentric, that the world and the universes doesn't start with and end with you and me, that you and me are actually just part of this huge process. Now you start to understand Buddhism at a different level. You start to understand the rhetoric of these sutras at a different level. And you start to understand how, at some far more fundamental basis, our karma, our way of understanding being in our tendencies and conditions, are worlds or realms that we are constantly instantiating based on a momentum, that everything in this universe is kinetic energy. If it's not kinetic energy, then it's not in the universe. Because this whole universe, your life, my life, our karma, is precipitant or amalgamated, pick a word, from billions and billions of small little interactions collecting together with their origin, and here's the Buddhism, beginningless time, kind of a conundrum statement, from quiescent energy. What you and I observe day to day is the formations, moment to moment to moment, universe, 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 universe. And our practice of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo is actually connecting with, influencing that freight train of cause and effect, of manifestation from potential. Potential doesn't have a direction other than time. It moves forward through time. That's how you and I experience potential. We experience potential instantiating one moment after the next. And if we can influence that freight train of karma with a life affirming, a life manifesting, an appreciation, Buddha-ness, we can actually move this universe. Your universe, my universe, our universe says, this multiverse. You might trip over that language. I'm trying to condense this whole thing, but it's something to consider, isn't it? What's actually going on in your perception of life, your universe? It shares a great many things with my universe, her universe, their universe. But you cannot deny the differences. How do we all connect to the foundations of the formations? Yeah? Something to consider. But, I mean, that very thinking is what Shakyamuni is talking about when he says that we must be bodhisattva. That we must recognize that all our universes are within a universe which contains all of our universes, which may in fact be one of many other universes. But in this one, as we course through it, we share origins. We share everything, where everything is everything. That silly song again. You are everything. Everything is you. So, let's see what happens as we continue this conversation between Subhuti and Shakyamuni. See if it doesn't ring in there something of what I've just said. Section 22. Subhuti, what do you think? Did the Tathagata realize any such dharma as unexcelled perfect enlightenment? Did the Tathagata, enlightenment itself, right? This battle between human, a self, and an experience, the Tathagata experience of the multiverse, did that experience realize any such experience as unexcelled perfect enlightenment? Did it find, did it attain, or isn't it that what it is itself? That's really the question here. So Subhuti rightly identifies, says, no, indeed, Bhagavan, the Tathagata did not realize any such dharma, as though dharma is a thing, Bhagavan, as unexcelled perfect enlightenment. It just is. The Buddha said, so it is, Subhuti, so it is. The slightest dharma is neither obtained nor found therein. Thus it is called unexcelled perfect enlightenment. This is the Buddhist thing that a lot of people pick up on without really understanding Buddhism anyway, is that there's the thing, and then there's a label for the thing, and that's one thing too many. Because the label is the busy work of a mind of identification, whereas the accomplishment of enlightenment requires no label. It simply is experienced. You could say that's a technicality, but it's important. Once again, Shakyamuni makes it clear that identification is not your friend. It is the soup. It is the you and I trying to identify other multiverses outside of our experience when you and I are that multiverse. It's quite a shift in perspective, yeah? 23, furthermore, Subhuti, undifferentiated is this dharma in which nothing is differentiated. So, what does that mean? You would not argue that I am not this book, or that this video is not your car, or that you are not your dog, or that your house or your shed or your whatever, your clothes, you might identify them as yours and your style, but you understand that everything, our world of definitions and identities, exists as a huge database of differentiation. We discriminate one thing from another. Like ice cubes are not water and water is not steam, and yet they are, but we identify them in the states that they're in as different things, right? I mean, it sounds silly, but the reason I say all that is because if you get into science and you start taking apart everything that you see as a thing, and you get down to the molecular level, you start to see that everything isn't so specific, that there's a certain set of possibilities. Carbon, methane, combinations of carbons, right? So on and so forth. And so you start to see quite a lot of homogeny in the world. Yes, well, that's just a different arrangement of these few molecules giving me iron, whereas if you take out one of those molecules, you end up with plastic. Don't quote me on this, but I'm just identifying the way things are different and identified in our world. When we get to the molecular level, there's not that much variety. And then when we get to the atomic level, oh my goodness. The differences, well, look at the periodic table, right? How many elements are in the periodic table? On a very real level, those are the only differences between you and a rock and a piece of coal and a painting and a light, because everything is consistent of some set of atoms on that chart. That's quite a lot of homogeny, equanimity. See the difference between scientific terms and Buddhist terms? They're not far apart, right? And then you get to subatomic levels. And you start looking at electrons and protons and neutrons and then quarks. And suddenly, as we've discovered in the last couple of decades with the boson field, the electron, suddenly everything isn't particles anymore. Everything is clouds of possibility. Electron clouds, electron spheres. But, what the boson field enables particles? See, I don't like that word. Enables packets of energy to manifest mass, right? Some of you may not know the photon has no mass. An electron has mass. So now we're starting to dig into science, and I don't want to bore you or mislead you. The point being is that the more you dig into what life is, the less differences there are in everything. There's no Sylvain atom. There's no Sylvain molecule, right? But Sylvain is made of infinite atoms and molecules. It's not about good or bad. It's about recognizing that all of our differentiation, Bob, Ted, Sylvain, Mohammed, Hans, not much difference. The only real difference going on there is attitude and intent. The only differences going on there are man-made databases, the warehouse of Sylvain and the warehouse of Bob and the warehouse of Betty. But what are we warehousing? Same stuff. The only real difference is how we choose with our minds to experience. And by chanting Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, that universal formation energies of being, the differences start to we start to shed them. We still have them. We operate with them every day. We start our cars or pedal our bikes or whatever. But in our heart, in our understanding, in our minds, we're less and less fixated on those differences and more fluid in the existence of life. We see more and more equanimity. Instead of identifying differences, we start to identify commonality, or rather settle within the commonality, which is the real universe and life. Equanimity. And so this is the kind of a battle in words to try to expose that truth. Furthermore, Subhuti, undifferentiated is the Dharma, the experience, in which nothing is differentiated. The Dharma, the experience of enlightenment, is where the differentiation breaks down. Now, do you see what he's saying? Thus, it is called unexcelled perfect enlightenment, but that's not what it is. That's just a label for trying to embrace this idea, this experience of undifferentiation, equanimity. Without a self, without a being, without a life, without a soul, an ego, an identifier of I am this, not that. See how this, not that starts to break down? Self and other starts to break down. Without a soul, undifferentiated is this unexcelled perfect enlightenment, by means of which all auspicious dharmas are realized. In other words, once you start to experience Buddha-ness and start to remove these differentiations, these clung to differentiations, mine, and it's not so much mine, it's just my experience of it. Well, that's a dharma. And as you disassemble that mountain of differentiation and start to realize that very little of it, if any, has merit, hold on your identity, you start to understand the experience far more broadly of what your life is, what all life is. So this is what he's talking about here. And how so? Auspicious dharmas, Subhuti, auspicious dharmas are spoken of by the Tathagata as no dharmas. Thus they are called auspicious dharmas. You're thinking that you experience everything that you've differentiated in certain ways are just built on a castle of sand. That once you get to the Dharma of enlightenment, all of those experiences are now shown in the sun to be constructions of your mind. That they needn't be that experience. That in fact, those are conditions you have samsarically put upon and use as differentiators, but they're all illusions. You follow? So, I don't know how much further I want to go because he's dropping some logic bombs here. Moreover, Subhuti, if a man or woman brought together as many piles of the 7 jewels as all the Mount Sumerus in the billion worlds of the universe, and gave them as a gift to the Tathagatas, the Arhants, the fully enlightened ones, and a noble son or daughter grasped but a single 4-line gatha of this Dharma teaching, of the perfection of wisdom, and made it known to others, Subhuti, their body of merit, would be greater by more than 100-fold. Indeed, by an amount beyond comparison or comprehension. I think that's a good place to stop because I need to talk about that for a moment. Hopefully, you follow this logic train and you get to this point where once again, Buddha pulls out this ideation that we have in our samsaric warehouses, yeah? That we have on that one shelf in the highest corner, the most valuable thing. Oddly, there are 7 of them, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, but be that an association or a reality, it's just, I think, interesting. These 7 jewels, if you were to collect all of them, whatever that is, and in the billion worlds of the universe and gave them as a gift to Buddhahood, what do you think he means by the billions of worlds in the universe? Is he talking about the multiverse there? He's actually identifying that you and I are universes, and that all the worlds, quote, realms of existence, of mentation, of the mind, are their own universe. We label them. We give them names as though they are different, but they all share in the same fundamental energy, the same fundamental formations, the collections of energy with work, energy with actions, energy with tendencies and conditions. And we identify each collective of those as different people, but really there's very little that separates us, yeah? That the equanimity of Buddhism is built into the physical universe. They're not two separate things. That's why when we read the Vimalakirti and it states unequivocally that this world that you are experiencing is the very world of Buddha, the Pure Land. It's not outside of you. It's not anywhere else. That we are all the Pure Land. It's just a perceptive difference. That perception is our experience. And what we're working toward in Buddhism is breaking down that perception to its equanimity so that our experience can be of the entirety of life. Which it already is. It's only our minds that keep us from experiencing life that way. We are locked into our own bubble of reasoning and identification. And this is the rub, right? It's almost like this age of Buddhism, this Mapo, this age of the loss of the teachings, that the feared age of, we've talked about this before, the tremendous distractions, the sectioning off, what are we witnessing in people today? From the elite to the low. Everybody's positioning themselves. I'm a this, you're not a this, you're a that, I don't like that, you don't agree with me. It's like we're in a deep, deep struggle of identity right now. Right? Identity politics. Everything's about like a little baby demanding me, me, me. What does that sound like? The monkeys. That's what that sounds like. That's the delusion. And it's like a pimple about to pop. All of that ridiculous self-identifying, I'm superior. Why are you superior? Because you're not me. What? You are me. We're all of the same energy, the same process, the same realms. We need to stop spending so much time trying to identify differences and spend more time identifying sameness, equanimity. Once we start to do that, those differences are exposed as tiny, tiny. It's kind of silly. It's foolish. We're so latched on to these little tiny differences. when in fact there's so much that we share. When we talk about the Buddha eye, the Dharma eye, or the physical eye, it's not the eye we're talking about. It's how we perceive. It's how we discriminate. There's so little of what the universe is actually made of that we base our discriminations on. It's laughable. But you don't know that if you're totally invested in it. That's your whole universe until you start awakening your mind to see how minuscule and therefore incidental that whole controversy of self is manufactured. That in point of fact, there are very, very little differences in all life. It's scary. Now we're kind of backed into a corner civilization-wise. So when's it going to happen? When is that wall of screaming monkeys going to finally break down? When is that voice going to crack? When we all go, oh man, life is so much more. And be amazed. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. My friends, we are all working on it. This is why I congratulate you and thank you in every single video. As simple as I try to make it sound, we're our claws, our talons, they're long. Boy, we like our stuff. We like our egos, yeah. Hey, you know what? You don't have to lose it. You don't have to get rid of it. Right? It's just like when you feel like you're drowning in the ocean. You go too far away from shore, and all you want is to get rid of the ocean. And then as soon as you get close enough to shore and you can stand on the sand and walk out of it, well, you love that ocean. You don't want to get rid of that ocean. But now your life condition is free of it. Not free of it as in it's gone, but free of it as in it no longer has a hold on you. And now you can appreciate it in a whole different way. Wow, that's a powerful thing, that ocean. Yeah, there's an insight. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. That's Buddhism. Thank you for practicing. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thank you for those of you who are supporting this channel, this endeavor, this resource, this sangha. You guys, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Great bodhisattvas you are, truly. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear more word salad about quantum, how it relates to Buddhism. Because it really does define what Buddhism is actually doing. This isn't mystical. I keep saying that. And if you dig into it with scientific terminology and you start to relate the two, it's no accident that physics and philosophy tend to be tandem practices in many universities, because the implications of what we know about the physical world can't escape our constantly analyzing, discriminating mind. Well, isn't that interesting? Isn't that what Shakyamuni was saying? Essentially the same thing, but from a different point of view. Wow. It kind of solidifies your thinking about what we're doing when we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. We are influencing a freight train of kinetic energy. I know that's all words. How do I tie that together? Well, maybe I need to do a video or two. Maybe I need to try to illustrate that. Maybe that'll help it gel. But know this, please know this, my friends. What you're doing is essential. It's essential to life. And by that I mean a beatific experience of life for yourself and those around you. Let's disassemble those fake political sides of things because they're just noise. They're not real. They're invented. That life is so much more than that. But we have to be convinced of it ourselves before we can influence others, yeah? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you again for being here. I will see you in the next one, promise. Bye for now.